Okay, before we run a gathering stitch, we want to make sure that we mark this so that we know points to match up to the bodice with. We just want to divide this into fourths. So your stitching will be 1, and then if it's folded exactly in half, just make a mark on this other, on the fold. That's 2. Okay, now just fold it so that your little marks match up, and then go ahead and mark each one of the folds there. So that's 3, and this one is 4. Okay, now we'll go to the sewing machine and we'll run a gathering stitch. Okay, now we're going to run the gathering stitch. What we're going to do is we're going to put this on the longest stitch length that your machine has. Mine has a 6, so I'm going to go up to 6. And then we are going to sew not at 5/8 of an inch, but just above 3. So wherever your mark for 3/8 of an inch is, go just slightly above it. Do not back stitch at the beginning here. Just keep some tails on your thread there and just go sew to the middle part. So we're starting here at the seam, and this will be the back, and then sew to the part where it's going to be the front middle. So it'll be 1 mark, 2 marks at the second mark. Okay, here we go. Do the same thing. Start where you left off at, leave some tail, and go ahead and stitch right around back to where the seam was. So you'll have, your tube is now divided into 2 parts. Now at this middle part, we're going to tie these ends together so that these threads won't pull out. So just tie both the ends on the front together in a square knot, and then both threads on the back together in a square knot. That way we're going to pull from the seam up each side, and it's a better way instead of trying to pull one whole circle. That way your gather will be a lot more even. Okay, I'll do this and then we'll pin it to the bodice and we'll sew it together. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and pin the skirt part to the bodice. Here's the middle of our tube, which was the fold line, and remember that's where we tied our strings together, our threads together. We're going to put that right in the middle of our bodice. And really it's just easy. You don't always have to mark all the little marks on your pattern. Just fold it in half, and you know right where the middle's at of the front. So you know it's right there. And here's our tube, and we'll put right sides together and pin that. Okay, now we're going to stretch this out, our tube, and we're going to see how much more we need to gather up. Now a good 6 inches or so. So just go ahead and just pull one of the threads, and it should just slide right along. And just pull it up, and then just kind of even out the gathers. And the more you gather stuff, the more you'll get a feel about how to gather and how to just kind of even them up. Just let it slide through your fingers. You can see that there. Just run it and let it slide along the thread. You can see it's pretty even there. Pull up a little bit more. Okay. Now we're going to find the back. Now remember that we're going to put buttons in here, and they're going to cross. Oops, there it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to overlap this back by 5/8 of an inch or so, about like that. That's what we added on to have an overlap for our buttons. So we're going to overlap it that much, and now the middle between the 2 edges, the middle is going to be the middle center back, and that's where we want to line up the seam line on our tube for the skirt. Okay, so slide those together, and then here's the seam where the skirt goes directly in between. directly down the center. And we'll go ahead and pin that. Okay, now you can kind of see if your gathering is going to fit. Just kind of pull it taut with your fingers. You can see I can probably pull up just a little bit more of the gather. Just a little bit more. And it should lay fairly close to the bodice. It's the same length once you pull it up. And once you're fairly close, go ahead and find the string on the back. It's the same one that matches it. I'll just pull that stitch out there. It's easier. Here it comes. And just go ahead and tie those together so that it doesn't slide anymore, because you don't want it to slide anymore. Okay, now just go ahead and pin your gathers in. You had a mark too that should fit right to that seam line, about halfway. So as long as your gathers look nice and even, I don't stress out too much about every single little mark. Those look pretty even. So, pin to the middle and then keep pinning back and forth. Never just pin around one way. Always make sure you work from the outside in. That way it's all even and you don't get to the end and go, oh, how am I going to take up this ½ inch that I have hanging out here and it won't fit in anywhere. Then you don't have to unpin the whole thing again. So, okay, that side's pinned and ready to go. So I will finish off this side over here. All I have to do is pull up the gathering stitches and pin it in, and then we'll go to the machine and we'll just sew at a 5/8 inch seam allowance. When you sew it on the machine, make sure that you're sewing just under the gathering stitches. And you might have to adjust it a little bit as you're sewing. Make sure you don't have a big flat gap. Just pull it up with your fingers and go ahead and sew that all in. And then finish it off with your zigzag stitch if you don't have a serger, and then clip off the excess, and then you're ready for the hem. Okay, I'll meet you back here.